Today we're diving into a book that's been a massive cultural phenomenon for over 70 years. It's Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking. This thing was published all the way back in 1952, but its message has somehow stayed relevant for millions of people, generation after generation.
And that's really the big question, right? In a world that has changed so much, how does a book from the 1950s still manage to sell millions and millions of copies? What is the secret sauce here? Well, to figure that out, we're going to break down its core ideas, one by one. The appeal of this book, it all starts with a very direct, very powerful promise. And it's one that taps into a feeling that I think every single one of us can relate to. It's that feeling, right, of just being completely worn down, like you're constantly fighting an uphill battle against the daily grind. Peele absolutely understood how common the struggle is, and he gets right to it from the very first page. And this is his answer. Right there in the introduction, he makes this incredibly bold claim. You don't have to lose to your circumstances. He says there's a path to peace, better health, and this endless flow of energy. So the question becomes, how do you actually do that? Well, he lays out a whole set of specific mental tools. All right, so the very first tool, the one that everything else is built on, is all about developing a genuine, rock-solid belief in yourself. Because without that, he basically argues, none of the other techniques are ever going to work.
Peale gives this enemy a name. He calls it the inferiority complex. He describes it as that nagging little voice of self-doubt in the back of your head that sabotages everything and just makes you feel insecure. He even calls it a destructive malady that keeps people trapped. So how in the world do you fight this thing? Well, Peele's primary weapon is this affirmation from the Bible. But what's really fascinating is how he presents it. He doesn't just treat it as a religious belief, but as a kind of scientific tool, a mental antidote to the poison of self-doubt. And this is where it gets super practical. See, it's not just wishful thinking. Peele lays out a 3-step mental workout. First, you have to build a crystal clear picture of success in your mind. Then you become a security guard for your thoughts. You actively catch and cancel out the negative ones. And finally, you reinforce your new belief with that core affirmation, basically rewiring your brain through sheer repetition. Okay, so once you start building that foundation of self-belief, the next step is to work on your internal environment. Peele's second tool is all about creating a peaceful mind, which he says is the real source of personal power. Peele tells this great little story to make his point. Imagine 2 people. One of them goes to bed after just filling his head with all the stressful, troubling news of the day. And, no surprise, he sleeps terribly. The other person fills his mind with peaceful, calming thoughts, and he wakes up feeling completely refreshed. It's such a simple idea, but it's powerful. Your last thoughts before you fall asleep can totally change your entire next day. To actually do this, to fill your mind with peace, Peele offers a technique he calls suggestive articulation. It's all about using the power of sound. He suggests saying a word like tranquility out loud, nice and slow, and just letting the vibration of the word itself calm your mind.
Another one he loves is serenity. The logic here is pretty straightforward. Just like stressful words and thoughts can create actual physical anxiety, peaceful words can create physical calm. You're basically using sound to intentionally shift your own emotional state. It's pretty cool. And now we get to what Peele considers the single most powerful tool in his entire toolkit. He sees this as the master key that unlocks absolutely everything else. He calls it prayer power. Now this is a really radical way of thinking about prayer. Peele argues it's not some passive, wishy-washy thing. He describes it as an active, almost scientific method. He even makes this wild comparison. He says, just like science has figured out how to release atomic energy, there are reliable spiritual methods to release spiritual energy. And he boils it all down into this super memorable 3-step formula. First, you prayerize. You turn prayer from a formal, once-in-a-while thing into a constant running conversation. Second, you picturize. You use your imagination to create a vivid, detailed movie in your mind of the outcome you want. And finally, you actualize. You hold on to that mental picture with total faith as you work towards it, basically bringing it into reality. So, when you put all these tools together, self-belief, inner peace, and prayer power, they all point to one central, overarching idea. Peele loves this quote from a famous psychiatrist, and it really lands his most important point.
A massive, scary fact can be totally overcome by the right attitude. But the wrong attitude, well, that can make you fail before you even start. In his world, your perception of reality is way more powerful than reality itself. So what's the final practical thing you can do? Peel's advice is simple. When you feel defeated, stop counting up all your problems. Instead, take out a piece of paper and physically list out your assets, all the things that are on your side. Could be your family, your friends, your own integrity, your health. He argues that by deliberately focusing on these strengths, you actually generate the power you need to overcome any challenge. And that right there is the secret to this book's incredible staying power. If your mental pictures really do have the power to shape your reality, then the most important question isn't what's happening to you, but what you allow to happen inside you. So that leaves one last question for you. What mental picture will you choose to create?